This lesson is going to walk you through some reminders about how to use your lovely Casio calculator, and then it's going to also focus on some of the things that you will be doing a bit more in grade 9 and help you avoid some of the mistakes that we often see when people are using their calculators. Okay, so first up, a right view means that basically as you see it is the way it's going to type. What you can see on this display here is some surd signs and fractions. We often use fraction button in using our calculator. And I'd like to remind you that BEDMAS stands for brackets and then exponents, and then divide and multiply go together next, followed by add and subtract. And that is something that if you're not using a calculator, you have to remember. But if you are using this calculator and many other scientific calculators, you don't have to worry about when you're typing in, because it just does it for you. Okay, so there's the display of what your calculator looks like mostly. There's the fraction button there that we're going to be talking about. Also remember that there's a shift button, which gives you all of the yellow functions. And every now and then, in the later grades, you're going to be using the alpha function, and that is the little red function inside there. Okay, so you will use that once this year towards the end of the year, but mostly we'll be using shift and also the ordinary buttons. A reminder, there's the pi button, and this one converts between a surd form and a decimal form, which is really helpful when your answer looks something completely different to what our memos have, but you really think you've done the right thing, and that's a good way to check. Okay, I'm going to bring up a calculator simulator, which will have all the right buttons on it for this Casio, but it won't look exactly the same. Alright, one of the first things to say about using a calculator is it's just a tool and it is a computer. So if your answer looks completely crazy, then retype it. Typing errors are very much part of using our calculators, and we need to be mindful of it. Okay, then we must be aware there's the little D at the top there, and that tells us that your calculator is using the degrees setting. Sometimes if you get some really strange looking answers, it's because it's using what's called a radian setting, and that would be incorrect for what you need it for, and you'll need to go back and change your settings so that it is in the correct mode for what you're using. Okay, so let's look at some of the buttons that are going to be really useful in the coming year. One of the ones I'd like to start talking about are the fraction buttons, and that's because they're often used incorrectly. So, for example, if we want to be writing about 2 and a half, that is very much a mixed number. Okay, it is 2 and then another half. So in decimal form, it would be 2,5. But when we type it into the calculator and when we use the mixed number button, and that's the one that comes up with 3 blocks like that, we need to make sure that we've typed it correctly. And by correctly, I'm going to show you both the correct and the incorrect version now. Okay, so I want to use the fraction button, and it's going to be my shift mixed number button. Okay, so if I punch in 2, I go to each of my little blocks and I put in what I need to have my 2.5. Okay, and then we press equals. It gives me 5 over 2, which is correct, and then if I go S to D, I get my 2.5, which you all intuitively know is correct. Okay, but let me show you how to get it really wrong. So what some people will do is they will punch in 2 over there and then go and put in a half like that. Okay, it looks so right, doesn't it? But check what happens when I push the answer button. It actually is telling me that it's taking 2 multiplied by a half, which is obviously 1. Okay, so first step to avoid errors when you're dealing with mixed numbers is to make sure you're actually dealing with this mixed number button. So the shift of the fraction button, rather than typing it in straight and finding that what you're actually doing is multiplying instead of treating it like a mixed number. And while we're on the topic of fractions, have a look at this one. What if I type an improper fraction like 21 over 4? And let me just press equals there. Okay, so that is what it is. I can obviously change it here into a decimal and back again, but there's something else I can do with it. It's currently an improper fraction, and if you look there, your shift function of your S to D button is going to allow you to change it into a mixed number, or if you have it in a mixed number, it's going to allow you to get it back into an improper fraction. I'm going to show you a couple of examples then that you can do with me. Take out your calculator and type in and just think about what you're typing, and a lot of them are going to be covering some common errors as well. Okay, one of the things we always do in maths is we round off to 2 decimal places unless otherwise specified. Okay, so let's have a go. Here, I'm going to type in -4 plus -3. So I'm going to type in the -4 and I'm going to go plus -3. Hopefully the answer is already in your head, and I could definitely put the brackets in, but in this case it's not necessary, and so I'll just get -7 as my answer. Here for 1.2 I'm going to type in using the fraction button, and I will put my -56, and then I will use my arrows, those buttons over there, to get down to the denominator, and then I will go to the right there to move away from the fraction. It's important that you know that you need to get out of the fraction to then type in that minus. Okay, and there we go. Alright, for 1.3 we've got a whole lot of things on the top and a whole lot of things on the bottom. So I'm going to have there -11, and I'm going to +7. Okay, here comes the BEDMAS. I can just go times 2, but what I'm actually doing is I'm saying -11 plus 14, right? So just so that you know for your own understanding of it, that's how it's going to work. Okay, then I'm going to have 7 minus 4 times, and I can put brackets here, but I don't have to. Okay, and that answer is 3 over 11. For the next two, they look like they should have the same answer, but they really shouldn't. Okay, the first one is -3, where I'm squaring using my x squared button. And what I want you to understand by that is that the only thing that is being squared here is the 3. Okay, so it's -3 squared. So it's going to be a negative. However, let me go back and let me put in some brackets. If I go and I add brackets, then what is being squared is the negative and not just the 3. And you probably remember this, but if you square a negative, you get a positive. So 1.4 and 1.5 are really common errors. Okay, then 4 to the power of 3, it needs to be given not the squared button, but the x to the power of block button. Okay, and then you can fill that in. Again, if you were going to do something else with that, you'd need to get out of it. So say I was going to say 4 to the 3 plus 1. I'd need to make sure that that plus 1 is outside of the exponent, because if I don't do that and I keep it in there, then my plus 1 will be part of the exponent, and what I'll actually be working out is 4 to the 4. Okay, so we'll just go back to the actual answer for now, which is that 64. Okay, the next one is the cube root of a negative number plus the square root of a positive number. Okay, so cube root, you can see there, can be done using my shift button, but I can also use this shift button over there where I have x to the power of block, I've also got there the block surd of a number inside as well. So there's my cube root. I can do it like that, of negative 1000. Okay, but let me show you this other one as well. I can take that number, and then I can fill in the fact that I want it to be a cube root, and then I just need to get down and into it to put in my negative 1000. Again, I need to get out of it using my arrow key so that I don't go and type everything under the surd sign. Okay, so you can see that that plus is not going to be inside my little surd sign. Surd signs are like brackets in that they keep everything together in one go, and you need to be aware that anything under that surd sign is being treated with a cube root in this example, and in other examples it'll be different kinds of roots. Okay, plus the square root of 64, and my answer there is negative 2. For the next one, I'm going to be taking a cube root of a fraction. So which button do we hit first? With a calculator, I'd always go outside in. So if I go and put my fraction button and then try and root it, I'm going to hit some trouble. So what I would rather do there is I'd rather go and put my surd sign in first. Okay, I'm going to use the cube root there. And then inside, I'm going to turn what's under the surd sign into a fraction like that. Okay, and then I can type in my 125 over my 27. And you might be able to do that one in your head. Okay, for 1.9, the negative is significantly outside of the brackets. So like what we were doing earlier, and we were raising negative 3 to the power of 2, here we're definitely not raising the negative. It's like the first example that we did. It's like 1.4. We are going to take the negative outside the brackets. I'm going to put in my negative and then put my brackets. Then I'm going to use my fraction button and put my 6 over 7. And then I'm going to close my bracket. Look what happens if I do it there. It closes a bracket that has never been opened to begin with. Okay, I'm just showing you errors as I go. So what I want is, I want to take away that little bracket. And these arrow keys are really useful like that. And what I need to do is I need to get out of the fraction first by using the arrow key. Then I can close the bracket. Then I can raise it to the power of 6. And it should be a negative answer because the negative is not getting raised by an even power. It's sitting on the outside and only the 6 over 7 is being raised. And there we go, a negative number. Okay, here comes 1.10, which is an example of using the mixed number button correctly. I'll need to put the negative down first and then go to my mixed number button. Then I'm going to fill in the 2, and then I'm going to put in my next bits. Okay, so my 2/3. Then I've got to get out of the fraction before I can say plus 6. Okay, so 10 over 3. Reminder then that I can also change that into a decimal. We've got more fractions in 1.11. Really going to exercise this particular skill. 2/3, and we do use it a lot in grade 9, we really do. Then I'm going to go minus, and I'm going to put in my mixed number button. 2 and 4 over 5, getting out of the fraction, plus my 1 over 6, and then my answer, negative 59 over 30. Now, if you didn't use the correct button there, you might get an answer of negative 23 over 30, which tells me that you didn't use the mixed number button, so just take care with that. We're also going to be doing scientific notation this year, and that's an example there of from 1.12, and one can type that in quite easily as well. There is a scientific mode on the calculator that we will go through with you when we get there, when we do exponents later in the year. but you can type this in exactly as you see it as well, and you will still get the right answer. But here's how to do what we used to use ladder method for. Here we can do it on the calculator. Okay, so this is a really nice one. We're going to say 74088. It's just a bit counterintuitive because I've got to first type in the number, then I'm going to press equals, and it's going to be repeated on the screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say shift, and then I'm using my fact button over there. And look what it gives me. It gives me what we used to get when we did ladder method. So it just puts everything into prime bases without having to go and do any extra work. And that's really, really useful. Okay, for 3.1, I've got a complicated little fraction there. And I'm going to round that one off to 2 decimal places. So again, all I'm going to do is type it in exactly the way that I see it, and then take it from there. So I've got 8,95, and then I'm going to add, and I now need to take this shift function to get a 6th root, and then I need to use my arrow keys to get into it. So that's going to be of 7,48. You can see this is going to be a very strange looking answer, or a very irrational one. I need to get down into the denominator, and then I'm going to type in my numbers, and it's going to be 2,03 times the 1,49, and then I can just press equals. Okay, so it's 3,42 and a whole lot of other numbers, but remember, with rounding off, we're just going to look at the 3rd decimal place when I want to round off to 2 decimal places. The 3rd is a 1, so that does nothing. It just leaves my 2 as a 2. So my final answer there would be 3,42. And let's look at the last example for today. Okay, I need to use brackets here, and there are times when you must use brackets on a calculator. And you know what, if you're ever unsure, use them, because if they are unnecessary, the calculator just ignores them and it carries on as normal. Okay, so I'm going to have my 7,91 in brackets. I think you just got to make sure that you get the brackets in the right place. Okay, and once again, I'm using my shift function of the root, and I'm taking the cube root of 81, and then I've got to close brackets. So just be careful that you get out of the cube root and then close the brackets. Okay, and that's going to be times by my 4,32. Okay, and then I need to get down using the down arrow into my denominator to put in what is supposed to be there. It's my 6,23 plus 1,491. Okay, so to round off that to 2 decimal places, I'd look at the 3rd one, which is a 4. 4 does not take the number up, so it actually is 2,00, which is 2, isn't it? Okay, one last thing that doesn't have examples to go with, but I just want to show you that brackets really does mean times. You know that 7 times 7 is 49, right? It's a times table. What if I just put it in brackets like that? And I literally stick brackets next to each other. Look what that gives me. Brackets means multiply. So if you ever get a question where you have brackets to mean multiplication, you can just type them in as is to your calculator, and it will know exactly what to do with them. What I can also do is use that answer and take it into another calculation. So I can clear that, and then I can say my answer, which if you remember was an easy number to recall, 49, and I can say answer plus 1. And what are you expecting? And there we go. So the answer button is also quite useful when you've got to do calculations that have multiple steps.